Happy New Year. That does say 2020, okay? It's not only my vision, it's also the year. Happy New Year. I'm going to answer a few questions, as I always do, in a very festive manner on the days that we just don't have any Italian high holidays, unfortunately, so I've got to just really take advantage of the ones that I have. Okay. This question, it's a very good question. But let me answer it like this, okay? And for those of you, so this is not a distraction, I'll move it down to the slow vibe, okay? But this question is it's a very interesting one. But let me go ahead and tell you, with regards to, is it a violation of FAPE? Guys, unless a parent or the caregiver or whoever is designated as the parent by definition on the IEP team, unless they complain and they initiate the dispute resolution aspects of the IDEA, there's no violation. You know, it's like the old adage, you know, if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound. Who knows? You're not there. If a parent does not complain, that is what is the basis of whether or not a FAPE is being provided. I can't tell you how many times that I have parent after parent after parent after parent that they know damn well that their child is not receiving a FAPE. But they take it because they don't want to challenge the school and they don't want to challenge government. And the schools know that. And believe me, they can size you guys up. And they know which parents they can take advantage of, which ones they can sit there and push the envelope on. They know all of this stuff. And, I have parent after parent after parent that will sit there and say, well, James, I don't want to push back on government. I get it. I do get it. But at the same time, that's what some of the administrators are banking on. Banking on the fact that the parent isn't going to trigger any kind of mechanism to call into question how one side of the IEP team sort of bulldogged or bullied or manipulated or drafted the IEP for the child. And so just because it's presented that way, doesn't mean it's a FAPE. But see, the parent is 50% of the decision-making process. And it's not majority rules. It is consensus. And consensus is a different animal. That means everybody needs to agree. Now, how do you know whether everybody agrees or not? Very simple. The parent notates on the IEP, you sign on the signature page, but you notate next to your name that you do not agree with the IEP as it's written. Okay? And if there's only one particular parts that you disagree with, then write it on there that you disagree with this aspect of the IEP, but the other aspects that you do agree with. All of these things are building blocks. If you have a bad child profile, most of the time you have bad child profiles or student profiles, which is on every IEP. It's mandated. It's got to be in there. That's usually because you have bad baselines, bad present levels of performance. Well, where do you get those? You get those off of updated evaluations. Good updated evaluations, good measures, good data collection. So that begets this, begets the goals, then begets the services. And services, in order to meet those goals, and the goals have got to be measurable enough and tangible enough to accomplish so that the child can make progress. And then based upon all of that, well, then you determine where this IEP can be implemented. That's least restrictive environment. That's the last thing you determine. But it's all determined after all of this is taken into consideration. That's including behavior. Does the child's behavior impede their ability to learn or the learning of others? The other one is, is the kid severely cognitively disabled, which by itself does not dictate that the child should be in a more restrictive setting. All right? And we'll get to that in just a second. This is going to be a little bit longer of a video than I'm trying to keep these things under a certain amount of time now. But that's where, in answering your question, of course, that's what the board attorney told you guys. There's no violation unless a parent says something about it. If they don't say anything about it, then hey, great. And schools run the gauntlet all the time. That's why when parents come to me, the schools will end up negotiating with me, or they'll end up, going, oh, we didn't look at this. Oh, well, we didn't see it this way. Or they're banking on the fact that parents aren't going to be strong advocates for their kids and trigger any of the dispute resolution mechanisms. And at that point, FAPE becomes exactly what they determined, not what you determined, or not what the team decided. And then what ends up happening is FAPE is a threshold, okay? It's a basic floor of opportunity. That's what we've been using for years until Andrew F. A basic floor of opportunity. That's how the courts have started right here. All right? So if FAPE is this basic floor of opportunity for your child, but you've allowed the school to sit there and set the mark here in the basement, and then you just accepted it and you didn't do anything about it, then you see where the problem is. Your child has been screwed out of what is their FAPE level because the parent hasn't advocated effectively or wisely or smartly or aggressively for their child. Now, it doesn't mean you have to sit there and bloodlet and lay waste and burn everything to the ground. That's just not how you advocate either, all right? But that's why this page was created, so you could raise your level of knowledge in this area so that you could sit there and understand how, when they move their chess piece, you move yours. And that's how it is, okay? Now, what I wanted to go back to, I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything here. The one thing I didn't understand from your question was that there is no LRE violation because the number of minutes he would spend in a SPED classroom didn't constitute a change in placement. You didn't provide me enough information in your question to have me really understand what that meant. Because I can see it a couple ways, so I didn't really want to target that in my question because I didn't understand where the child currently was. Now, as far as placing the child in a regular education classroom, yeah, of course, that's the assumption. We should assume competence, and we should assume that a child can receive a FAPE, and we know that the science for Down syndrome says that they should be pushed in to general education. And if the child doesn't have any behaviors that would impede their ability to be in there, then I absolutely believe that Down syndrome can be served in a general education environment with supports. They need that. That's what needs to happen. So I would need to know sort of why you were told that. And then since IDEA specifically says students should first have the opportunity to be successful, I agree. But once again, what does it matter if the parent doesn't challenge it? The parent has to challenge. When a district refuses to provide appropriate support and accommodations, this seems like a FAPE violation. And I would agree. But I would agree based upon what I've been saying. Now let's go back to that last thing that I wanted to touch on with regards to I just lost my train of thought. Unbelievable. See, it must be the new year. Must be the new year. Behavior severely cognitively disabled. I think what I was going to say there is that isn't a bar, okay? Just because a school district will find an IQ measure to peg a kid below 55, an IQ below 55, which will, classify them as severely cognitively disabled, that does not justify a move into a more restrictive setting by itself. There has to be a complete analysis in how to best serve the child. All right. And so that shouldn't by itself railroad a kid into a self-contained or more restrictive setting, absent the behavior. The behavior is really the justifier for more restrictive settings. I know where I was going with this. I use a reverse analysis when it comes to some of my clients. When the school system is wanting to sit there and say, well, we need more time and we need more pull-out time, I'm sorry, guys. Sometimes I will argue the opposite. That no, this is the threshold. It's a basic floor of opportunity. You guys, the school system is trying to say, well, we need them more. Well, why do you need them more? See, we're just asking for a basic threshold. You're wanting the kid more in order to justify an exclusion out of general education. And so the school will use that argument where they'll love our kids to death by putting them into more restrictive settings under the guise of more services, when in reality, every child's entitled to a basic floor of opportunity. And for some of our kids, like my own child at 16, she's autistic. She's not going to Harvard, guys. We know, my wife and I, fully cognizant she's not going to Harvard, and that isn't something she's interested in, and quite frankly, we're fine with that. It's the happiest 16-year-old I could ever possibly want, and that girl always has something going on. Never bored. But the realization on our part is that they don't need her more. The whole idea for her is, what can we do so that she can make measurable progress, tangible measurable progress. That's our basic floor of opportunity right there. And anytime I have a situation where the school's going, well, we need to pull this child out for social training. Well, social training can be a push-in service inside general education. Why do you need to pull the child out for that? That doesn't make any sense, because it was used as a justification to increase the minutes outside of the general education environment, thus changing the LRE, thus changing whether the child has a special education teacher or a resource teacher. Two separate classroom. These are all triggered by how many services they want to give your child. And I'm telling you, depending on the nature of the child's disability and their needs, the parent absolutely can sit there and say, come on, guys, this is our goal. And socialization, language development, these things are a higher priority than this academic piece that you guys are pushing. And just because you pull out my Down syndrome child, 5 days a week to sit there and work on math 2 different times for an hour each time, for what? At some point you got to sit there and have priorities. And those priorities have got to be reasonable, and they've got to be sane. To where our children have those opportunities that end up playing more to their benefit than these crazy pieces and these justifications to where they want to do all of this stuff outside of general education. And therefore it doesn't normalize our kids. So there are times when I will make opposite arguments that I normally would make. To where instead of asking for more services, I'm putting the brakes. I'm sitting there going, come on, guys. This can be done in general ed. This is overkill with regards to 2 hours of math services. We just don't need that. We need more resource. We need more recess. We need, options for specials, fun things that the child can be involved in, and, let's not over focus on things. Okay. That was the other piece I wanted to bring up.